we are Legally Sis. Welcome to our podcast.
The information provided in the show is for general informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice on any subject matter. No attorney-client relationship is created between you and Duran Schultz Law.
Hi, we are Legally Sis. I'm Attorney March.
I'm Attorney Rons.
Welcome to our podcast. Unknown to many, our corporation code has been recently amended by our legislators. So the corporation code is the Philippine laws that essentially governs the powers of the SEC or the Securities and Exchange Commission, the structures available for you when you form a corporation with the SEC, the rights and obligations of the stockholders, the directors, the members, trustees, and the fines or the violations if you don't follow the corporation. But with this recent amendment, they have now made interesting or significant change. Attorney Ross, could you please tell us what these changes are?
Okay. Under the revised corporation code, there's now what we call a one-person corporation. Before, you need at least 5 individuals in order to incorporate a company here in the Philippines. But with an OPC, you can form a company with just having one individual or sole owner. Also, in terms of existence, we now have a perpetual term. Before, it used to be 50 years. But now you can have more like 100 years or even beyond your lifespan. They now allow voting via in absentia for stockholders or shareholders. They also have remote communication in terms of attending meetings. Before, you have to be physically present. Also, in terms of capitalization, for OPC, there is no minimum paid-up capital unless, of course, there's a special law requiring that the paid-up capital has be met. Like in terms of recruitment, you need at least 1 million paid-up capital. Okay, so these are just some of the changes for under the revised corporation.
Actually, I'm very proud of their legislators because their changes are really apropos.
Yes.
In what we need now, especially with a one-person corporation, because a lot of companies or owners are saying, I don't need investors or I don't need people in my company. I can run it on my own.
Yes.
So in this episode, we will be discussing one of the significant changes of the revised corporation code, which is the OPC or One Person Corporation. Attorney Rons, what is an OPC?
From the name itself, OPC stands for One Person Corporation. So this is a type of business structure wherein a single owner or an individual may form a company without needing the need of having multiple shareholders, directors, or incorporators. So basically, under this structure, the individual or the owner will become the president and the sole director and single stockholder of the company.
So who may form an OPC?
Okay, a natural person, estate, or trust may form a one-person corporation, but there are exceptions for this one. Banks, quasi-bank, non-financial institutions, publicly listed companies, non-chartered GOCCs, even professionals who wish to exercise their profession, they cannot form an OPC. This is expressly provided under the law.
So, what are the important features of OPC?
Okay, mainly, as I have mentioned, the first one is that there's a single stockholder, sole owner. Also, in terms of existence, we already form a company with having perpetual existence, meaning the company may go beyond the lifespan of the owner. But an exception to this will be if the OPC is under a trust or estate, because it is coterminous to the lifespan of the trust or estate. In addition, in terms of liability, since an OPC is technically still a corporation, it will still have a limited liability, meaning the personal assets of the owner cannot be touched upon. Any creditors will have to go after the personal assets of the company itself.
So it's a little bit of a cross of sole proprietor. So could you please tell us a little bit why it's
okay? An OPC is different with the sole proprietorship. Number one, an OPC is registered under the Securities and Exchange Commission, whereas the sole proprietorship is registered under the Department of Trade and Industry. In terms of liability, an OPC has a limited liability, whereas in a sole proprietorship, there's no distinction as to the owner and the business. So whatever liability will be attached to the sole proprietorship, it will also attach to the owner, meaning the personal assets of the owner can be touched upon can be sought after by their creditors. Also, in an OPC, you may convert it, meaning from a one-person corporation, it may be converted to an ordinary stock corporation. Whereas in a sole proprietorship, if you want to change your business structure, you have to close down first your sole proprietor before you can operate under a new business structure.
Let's dive down on just being a sole owner. What if the owner dies?
Okay, if the owner dies, in an OPC, you have to appoint first during corporation stage a nominee and alternate nominee. So the role of these individuals is to take over the corporation in case the sole owner becomes temporarily or permanently incapacitated, or worst case scenario if he or she dies. And in addition, your heirs will be the one responsible if in case they want to continue, they have to renew again the license. Whereas in OPC, as I've mentioned, it may have perpetual term.
Correct. So, now that you are an OPC, do you still follow the rule on having officers?
Yes, definitely. An OPC is the same as regular corporations, so you will be needing a president, a corporate secretary, and a treasurer. By default, the president will be the single stockholder or sole owner. As the corporate secretary, it may be any Filipino citizen or resident here in the Philippines. For the treasurer, it can also be any resident. But the president cannot be a corporate secretary. However, the president may be a treasurer. But if this happens, you need to post a bond before the SEC. Minimum of this one is around, I think, 1 million pesos. It will depend on the authorized capital stock of the company.
Why do you think the legislators thought of putting a bond or 1 million?
I think because basically you're putting two positions, especially treasurer position, into one person. It's a protection also to your creditors in case something bad happens as to the sole owner. There's a bond already that can be used to protect the creditors.
It also helps on the check and balance.
Yes, sure.
Because the president will always have to run the business. And, another person should essentially, in the perfect world, be looking at the finances. That's correct. So if you wanted to be an OPC, what are the requirements? How are you going to do it?
Okay, actually registration with OPC is very easy. You just have to go to the portal of SEC. There's a step-by-step process on how to do it. There's a guide. Basic requirements will be first, you need a company name. Also, please take note that since it is an OPC, you need to affix the letters or the word OPC at the end. That will be the distinction for that one.
Yeah, that's important because others, if you are a corporation, you can only use
Inc., Incorporated, Corporation there. Aside from the name, basic requirements, you need to have an address. Also, you have the nominee and alternate nominee. And all of the forms under the SEC are pro forma. This will be generated by the website. So you will have your articles of incorporation and the acceptance letter of the nominee and the alternate nominee.
How long does it take to form an OPC?
Okay, there are actually two timelines. I've mentioned before that there is now a 1-day SEC processing. So in 1 day, you can have an articles of incorporation for an OPC. Another timeline will be the regular processing. Usually, the SEC would take 3 to 7 days to review. Assuming there are no disapprovals, it will take another month for the release of the certificate of incorporation. So approximately 1 to 3 months. This also includes the other stages for the business permit, the BAR, and the statutories, which are the SSS, PhilCont, and PAP.
Would there be a difference between a corporation and OPC as to the reportorial requirements?
In terms of reportorial requirements, it will be the same since it's still a corporation. So an OPC is required to submit a AFS or financial statements. And then the equivalent of the GIS, which is the appointment form of appointment of officers. And then other requirements that may be required by the other government offices.
How about taxes? Will it still be the same?
It will still be the same since it's still a corporation.
Which is one of the significant difference with a sole proprietor. Because in a sole proprietor, you follow the tax rule on the person that is earning as correct individual. So why do you think an OPC is a good business structure for those that are considering business?
Personally, I think it's a good option for business owners because it gives you the freedom to control your business without having to think about or consulting other business partners. Because as I have said, it's only you who will be the main person in running your business. So you can fully take control of the business, and at the same time, you can go after whatever vision you have for the corporation.
Do you think there are drawbacks in having an OPC as a structure?
In terms of drawbacks, I think it will be more on if you become
Big.
yeah.
And you'd want to have investors.
Yes, if your business expands already. But at the same time, not really a drawback, because as I have mentioned, you have an option to convert it. So if in the long run you want to have business partners, you can already expand your business and convert it to an ordinary stock corporation.
So as to form, how is it different when you file an OPC?
Okay, for the OPC, you only need an articles of incorporation and the acceptance letter of the nominee and alternate nominee. Unlike in regular corporations, you will be needing bylaws as well. For this one, for an OPC, there's no need for bylaws because there's only one owner. So you will not be needing an annual general meeting. For the fiscal year, which is incorporated in the bylaws, it will now be incorporated under the terms of the articles of incorporation.
So is it necessary that you're ready with the officers when you file for the opposite papers?
Not necessarily, because for an OPC, after the release of the certificate of incorporation, you have to appoint within 15 days. And then after appointment, you have 5 days to notify the SEC, who are your president, corporate secretary, and treasurer.
Considering that you mentioned that they don't have an annual general meeting, so when does the corporation or the OPC would have to file for their appointee form?
Filing will be every incorporation date, the anniversary of the incorporation date of the One Person Corporation.
So I guess for those that are always traveling, make sure that you're here when it's time for you.
Yes. If I may add also, based on experience, the usual bottleneck with the appointment form is that if the single stockholder is a foreigner, so you'll have to go through a apostille or consideration in order to have that form filed.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you have to do that
Every year. That's very costly.
or make sure you're in the Philippines when you do that.
Yes, of course.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Thank you for listening, and I hope you tune into our next episodes because we will be discussing about the conversion of OPC into a regular corporation. If you think that the OPC is no longer the best structure for you as you expand your business.
Bye. Thank you.